So. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Good morning, Matt. Good morning, Justin. Good to see you guys.
Yes.
It's always fun. I do miss the live thing, Joe. I mean, we'll make do. We're still an hour away from each other, but I do miss the actual classrooms in the hallways.
Oh man, yeah.
And we would miss Justin. We wouldn't see Justin if he was actually at his conference. Again, I know you're at your conference in your office, Justin, but what is it? IECA educators always use these acronyms. But what conference are we at, Justin?
Well, it's called the Independent Education Consultants Association, and it was originally supposed to be held in Tampa, Florida, on site. But about 2-3 months ago, they had decided, well, given this current situations, we have to go virtual. So, but
the old story. Go ahead, Justin. This is like 2 years you've been telling us you're going to conferences. So glad you made it to Tampa. Enjoy the beach, but you actually have a presentation too.
I wish I was in Tampa, but on the other hand, so I could enjoy a Cuban sandwich with salami. That's the only place where they have Cuban sandwiches with salami. But on the other hand, because it's application season and particularly it's UC month, it's just as well that I stay home. It just leaves me much more time to do that.
Well, it's a funny time for a conference too.
Yeah.
Did you know? I don't know how to just know these kinds of things. Salami sandwich. Have you ever had a Cuban salami?
No, I mean, your Cuban sandwich is usually it's a sliced bread. It's usually got like roasted pork, ham, Swiss cheese, some pickles and stuff and mayonnaise, and you press it like a panini, right? But but in Tampa, the Cuban sandwich has salami, has also a slice of salami in it. And I think that's the only place that has it, and I think it's because of the Italian influence, right?
This is the full evidence people are gathering. I go to the conference, meet a world-renowned expert in college admissions. He gives me a bunch of acronyms and explains them, but I'm going to remember a salami Cuban sandwich out of it, Justin. Joey, again, we know you're prepped for it, but you've got to actually have a presentation. DEI, Joe, I'm going to quiz Joe because none of us know these kinds of things. But this is definitely a huge trend in colleges, I think, in the last 5 years, 10 years. But DEI quiz, Joe, do you know if we're a dean of DEI or doing DEI programs? Quiz, Joe.
Yeah. It's a diversity program. It's a diversity program.
Diversity? Yeah. What's EI?
But
equity inclusion, right?
Equity
That's
inclusion.
Yes. But
yes,
so Wednesday you got this at the IECA, and then we're going to give you your beef too, Joe, because I know music's got these acronyms. But Justin's got this DEI at IECA. But tell us what you're doing, Justin.
Okay, well, I'm on an ad hoc committee for diversity, equity, and inclusion for the IECA, and we're actually going to be presenting like a panel, discussion about having conversations about issues and questions about diversity, equity, and inclusion, where we'll all present some ideas on how we advance those issues, or how to advance the objectives and aims of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And the thing with diversity, equity, and inclusion is that you can have diversity, but it may not be a really friendly, welcome workplace, right? So, for example, you can have a very diverse workplace from people with different backgrounds, but if the management is all of one group and the people don't feel that they're heard, that's not a lot of inclusion. Or if you have people and they don't feel that they're being heard, or they don't feel they can have advance or have opportunities, that's not a hell of a lot of inclusion. And so you have to have, it has to have teeth. You just can't do window dressing. And unfortunately, there's a lot of organizations, whether it's in education or in the corporate world or in government, will just do this for window dressing. and think, but you have to be really active and you have to be committed to that. And so we're having conversations about what exactly is, making a more inclusive educational experience or workplace, or especially, let's say, for educational access. What are you doing to make sure that everyone, no matter what their background is feeling included and getting the opportunities that they deserve?
So let's identify a few problems. I'm going to use Joe's technique he used, and I'll repeat some of these things. And I'm actually going to quiz Joe on these things to see if Joe and I are DEI educators. I hope we are. But we'll check some of our skills, and just so we're not doing window dressing too, right? But let's repeat back to some of these common problems I hear. What I would hear is access. That's common in systems. If I'm doing research and looking at access for schools and colleges, that's a major roadblock. So as a teacher here, Joe, let's kind of check ourselves. Your music academy, how do you check yourself for access? And not just window dressing, right? We understand what happens. We don't just fly a rainbow flag in the window. That would be window dressing. I think again, Justin can correct us. He's the wise one here. But what's happening is, as fellow educators in the hallway, kind of checking this stuff, right? I walk by a lot of classrooms that have that. It means something to people, right? That means access, a certain kind of access. But we got to make sure it's not just window dressing. Same thing with colleges. We can take a picture and put it on our admissions page, but there's 5,000 colleges in the US. If they're not doing some legit things like I hope you and I are doing, Joe, DEI. Give us some insight to our fellow teachers, people that are running a a church group even. That's where you get a tougher DEI, but churches can be diverse, inclusive, equitable.
Boy, big question, Matt. I think one of the big things about diversity, equity, inclusion. There was some in news recently. I think you may have heard about it. The Phoenix Suns organization last week is dealing with a kind of a scandal around like racism and misogyny in their upper management and ownership. And there's some deniability around narratives and stories that are being shared, and not there. It's not nobody's throwing anybody under the bus, but there's just rumors of some things that have been said and some deniability of those things and different narratives. Ultimately, people are saying that the person who leads the organization is not racist, and that comes from, like, you can say anti-misogynist, but when all that information comes from white dudes, then you don't have it's not valid. You have to have, like you're talking about, a diverse team of folks who are advocating for this person's like awareness. Hey, what's up, Ari? Come on in. No, you're good. And if you don't have that, and you're not bouncing off everybody what's going on, then you don't have, it's actually not valid. And this person is ignorantly misogynistic and ignorantly racist. And so what you have to do then is you have to include yourself with mixed company. And like I believe Justin's talking about, you have to find people on your teams and start these conversations and ask for these people's input without steamrolling whatever it is that they're saying, whatever their perspective is, because it's as a minority in a room, we have a different perspective on how we can state our opinion, because there's such a majority experience that dominates the space. And so this diversity, equity, inclusion is so essential, that you're giving a safe space for these folks within our organizations to speak, to be included, and for their opinions to be valued within how we are functioning.
That's a very, very nice and excellent description, Joe, about what it means to make an inclusive environment. I also like to point out, and this is something I discovered, is that groupings or people of representatives of groups are not necessarily all centered, let's say, around race or ethnicity or religion or gender identities. You can actually find, let's say, diversity and being inclusive about people in things such as, let's say, we call like neurodiversity, let's say learning differences, or even, let's say, age groups, right? Particularly in education, let's say in higher education, you might have non-traditional students. There are very significant and increasing groupings in higher education. So let's say somebody who's returning back to school, they're older, but they have a lot of valuable experience to share or something. Also, even, I've also found, let's say, people, let's say about disabilities, learning disabilities, particularly in education, that also has to be taken into consideration. And so you could really expand what exactly is diversity. It's more than just like race, ethnicity, or even socioeconomic income levels. And there's also a cross function. There's a cross, that people can span all these different groups.
Right. So right, Justin. And let's talk about some of these other types of diversity because they're so important. They get missed. Well, last week we were talking about neurodiversity. That's common in schools. Special ed departments are used to neurodiversity.
Mm-hmm.
I think the one that's always missed is age diversity. Now in colleges, we call them non-traditional students. Well, a graduate student can be any age. We understand that, but a non-traditional going back to college or re-entry programs. So when we see a 30 or 40-year-old college. But my push all along here, one of the reasons we're meeting the hallways, what happens in the hallways across campuses, what happens in city streets? You have age diversity. Why does diversity matter? And just to hammer home some of the benefits of diversity. You learn from people older than you, you learn people from younger than you. Just like you learn from people wealthier than you, and you learn people from poorer than you. Just like you learn from people from different religions. You get multiple perspectives, and it gives you perspective on life. But let's talk for a few minutes about the benefits of diversity. And thank you for opening the door for a lot of people there, Justin, right? I think you've just listed at least 10 types of diversity. We need to think about equitable access, and then inclusion. If people don't feel a sense of belonging in that community or that classroom, those are the problems. So how do we promote that? That's our challenge as Californians and Americans and world citizens.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I and my colleagues try to do is to just boil that down to what you could call like everyday actions that you can do that's very simple to do, right? Right? Go have lunch with somebody who's different than you or comes from a different background than you. And open your mind that, because you'd be pleasantly surprised by somebody you never expect to have to present something that is a worldview that is very illuminating, right? So I think like a few weeks ago, I was really pleasantly surprised by there was someone who was a younger generation than most of my cohorts, and he had a very refreshing, take on things, and I was just really, blown away. You never know where that's going to be coming from, and also, if you come from, let's say, a privileged background, there are things you can do, right? Be a person, right? So, well, let's say there's a person who's very hesitant to speak up. Did you encourage that person to, contribute? Maybe they're shy, maybe they're happy, right? Or maybe they feel embarrassed. Do you inspire confidence? Do you reach out to that person, right?
I wonder how Ozzy did this. Felt people included all ghosts and goblins and monsters in the Halloween concert. These are going to technically, I tease Joe because he's very good at it. He's a little younger than us, but I think he's catching on to what Justin's trying to teach us. But let's give him another quiz. Should I give Joe another quiz? Here's how I do inclusion. I know inclusion is like, if I look at my week, the farthest north I've been, Justin, and you know these better than other people, but I've been to Woodside, Menlo Atherton, Palo Alto, Gunn. I've been to Los Altos, Mountain View, Monte Vista, Homestead, and Cupertino High, Saratoga, and Los Gatos High last month. I know my box. Oh, Santa Cruz High, let's add, because I did make it over the hill once. But Justin understands that group. What I'm doing online, what we're doing by giving access to people, we are making sure we are being, again, available for people who need help in any places. I haven't traveled outside the state. Again, there's only certain people who can limit me, and I don't share, like when I'm sitting in the hallway at those schools, it's not like I'm chatting with people authentically there. But when we talk about, let's ask Joe, because we help people all the time, and Justin, we expand. I mean, we help people all over the world too, but let's ask Joe this quiz question. If you're applying to the University of Washington, they ask some sort of quiz question, like give an example of your experience with a diverse student or something. you remember something like the quiz? Let's quiz Joe, and then we'll give him a chance to talk about, you know, I'm setting him up because I'm sure he includes ghosts and goblins and monsters of all sorts of aliens. What's the quiz? What would we ask them if we were the university? Any college question? How would we prep a student for this kind of thing, Justin? Give an example of. Go ahead.
It's called the community question, right? It's basically called it's the short response, and it's basically how do you it's our families and communities often define us in our individual worlds. So they say, describe the world you come from and how you, as a product of it, might add to the diversity of the university. It's basically the diversity question, like what is your role in the community and how do you function with it and how do you encourage, people of different backgrounds to thrive in it.
And I didn't mention Joe's island on that list because I haven't been to his island all month. So, Joe, could you really tell us how your community's doing? Explain to us where you come from. It seems like a foreign land after the last month not being there in person, but I trust you're doing well. I see awesome things, and you do got awesome. Keep up absolutely. YouTube videos, we love it. As parents, again, I hear other people, I'm going to pass along the shout out. Please keep those going, Joe. We love them. We love them. But answer Justin's quiz question for us so we can prove why you get into an elite college, why you're an elite educator, Joe.
Oh man, that's a great question. It's so funny coming from the Midwest. We're not, they say don't talk about why you're good at something. And it's like, oh, this is so funny. Yeah, might as well, right? So, yeah, I think when you talk about neurodiversity and equity of access, I know I work with a number of students at the academy who have learning disabilities. And what we do is one of the biggest things is as educators is we're compassionate and we have a complex understanding of different learners' needs. And we also are trained on multicultural education and understanding the different aspects of culture that play into, how a learner is present within a learning environment and within a social environment, and how it's our responsibility then to facilitate a space that allows students to thrive within that setting. And I think maybe one of the biggest examples is yoga balls this week. I've got, this is so crazy. Matt, you probably know.
I'm picturing your community here. You got your music academy here, and you're showing us how your community includes diverse learners, and we get learning differences. Yoga balls. We're with you. One
of those is, I've just got some kiddos who they got the wiggles, because I work with primarily 7 to 11-year-olds in an after-school music setting. And I've got a number of students who have ADHD services and 504s at school that make accommodations for their special learning needs within that. And I just figured, let me get some yoga balls and have them sit and move around on them. And it's amazing that they can listen and learn. So, because I do that, I say, can you repeat back to me what you're hearing me say and what we need to do right now? And they will tell me verbatim what I said. And I will say, well, so what does that mean to you? I ask them a follow-up question, and then they're processing at the same time. Now, sometimes they're not, though. And this is a great example of like when they're what's happening with the students is their physical distraction is something that is just a piece of who they are, or that is now it's an actual distraction. So we bring that to attention just because we're learning music and because we're playing songs and we're in a different learning environment than they are when they're at school. Because at school, that distraction turns into a distraction for the entire class because there's 25 kids or 30 kids in the classroom. Here, I'm working with groups of 4 to 8 students at a time, and they're not distracted by the other kids bouncing because, well, probably they're bouncing as well because I've got enough yoga balls for everybody. And then we're able to make a boundary around what that yoga ball is and say, okay, so this is an aid or is this a distraction? And when it becomes a distraction, we just label it as such, and it brings more self-awareness to our kiddos because I work on higher levels of metacognitive awareness and self-awareness and learning. And so as these students who struggle in the classroom are now able to bring greater self-awareness to their own body while they're in a learning environment, they end up benefiting so much more. And that's why they're able to learn so much more music when they're at Ozzy's Music Academy. because we're not just teaching them music, we're teaching them about themselves as learners, so it's really, really neat.
That's right. I forgot about the yoga balls. In classroom. That's really wonderful. I remember that we're working in a special ed, classroom about using that, or even when they're mainstreamed. Yeah. Thanks for that reminder. And that allows them to dissipate their, I guess, energy in a sense and channel it.
Yeah, and sometimes when you say, dissipate that energy, sometimes I think it can be nervousness. I think that they've got nerves and anxiety. Obviously, little kids have a lot of energy, but they can feel nervous in a learning environment because, say, they messed up. They did a bad job on a test, or they blurted out and somebody was mean to them because of it. And like that sticks with us. And so giving them a space to dissipate that and reconnect with their calm, their equanimity in the face of classroom challenges can be really, really powerful. Yeah, thanks, Justin, for chiming in on that, man.
Yeah, right. Any other, again, I'm going to repeat what I heard Justin say a year ago, at least, because I hear to simplify, right? Some of those simplifying steps, and what I hear the yoga balls do, right? If you're twitchy or whatever, you're moving around, do something that helps you simplify. That way you're not twitching and running all over the place, and you're just sitting, and then you've simplified everything. Now you can work on your essay or your college application, your new song. Right on. A couple serious shout outs, and we had some awful news again. This is why we're doing what we're doing. If you're joining us for the first time, please reach out to 5 people. If you're an expert or a professional, reach out to 25 people. We've been on this chat. Justin and I and Joe say, let's meet for 5 minutes and 10 minutes to do something public. Because we catch people in private all the time. This is what we want to be doing. Stop by, call us, text people, but reach out to 5 other people right now. If you've never heard me before, anybody will work. But the goal is to get, you're reaching 25 people a day. When I say this, I'm a classroom teacher. I'll see 1,000 kids today. I will make sure by name to tell at least 200 students by name, say their name. I didn't realize that's difficult. And I don't expect everybody to be able to do that, but when you think of that makes people feel they belong. It's as simple as by saying somebody's name. Now, out of those 200 students, I admit, I might mispronounce 10 of them. That's part of what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to make sure I pronounce every single name properly so they feel welcome. It's a hard challenge. Silicon Valley diverse is wonderful. That's how I learned. It's wonderful. But we did lose 2 very, very important people last week, Justin. Terrible. I don't know if Joe knows this news, but Wilma Chan from Alameda, the County Board of Supervisors, was. Somebody just shared that. Sometimes I'm secondhand on the news, but Wilma Chan was a county board of supervisors. We met her at the marina, Joe. She was a hero of mine, but she was struck by a car. Is that what happened? Or biking?
Right, when she was walking her dog. She was out for a walk. She was a pedestrian.
Yep.
So,
yeah,
go ahead.
It's a theme. The pedestrian safety here in Alameda is a constant theme, and there's people getting hit on I think at least a weekly basis. We're having a number of people getting hit by cars, or traffic accidents. But in a city where it's supposed to be 25 miles an hour, like every street is 25, you just end up with some people who are just not being safe, and high traffic zones near the beach where there's a lot of people living. I think it was during the morning commute time. We've got those many roads where there's traffic lanes and then a pedestrian lane and like a bicyclist lane. So a lot of things happen, and you just got to be on your toes. You have to be 100% focused on the road, or somebody will end up out in front of you.
Right. Yeah, because I think it's that road that's right by the coast, so it's a major thoroughfare. So probably motorists are probably driving faster than they usually would.
So thank you, Wilma Chen, for everything you did for us. I can't get me right. Everything she did with me was to build bike paths and help me.
Mm-hmm.
So shout out to her. And Justin, I gotta let you take the other one, because thanks for meeting me in the hallways. You're watching emotional control, but there's others too. Justin, I know from 5-10 years back. And Justin, I know you gave a Toastmasters presentation to a fellow parent of us that you don't even know we're connected, but you gave a Toastmasters presentation called like it's okay not to be okay.
Mm-hmm.
About a year or 2 ago during the pandemic, in the middle of this, same thing. I don't even want to say a year ago, but you can talk about it. But Tone Lee wrote that poem. Just tell Joe and just please Just
Okay.
sure. Just take a moment. Thank you, Justin.
Okay, well, about 2 weeks ago, we had a young man take his life, and he was actually a member of our community. And so he was, I think he had some friends who lost through suicide when he was in high school. So I think because as later on as a young adult, he recently, took his life. So it really hurt and devastated the community. So the other thing about it is that it's really important for people to pay attention to their mental health and their wellness. It's been exacerbated by, being socially isolated, particularly in the pandemic. So the thing is that, if you, please be in touch with your feelings. As Joe has often mentioned, the first thing to, being well is to admit to yourself, is to admit to yourself that it's okay if you're not feeling okay. So we implore everybody to get help when you need it.
Thank you, everybody, for that serious moment too. Because part of the research nerdy part of me, we don't want copycats. So oftentimes we don't even talk about these things because we don't want to talk about these things. But the two most dangerous things to young, again, not even young, 15 to 55-year-olds, the two most dangerous things right now, what are the two leading causes of death, are drug overdoses and suicide by gun. That says a lot about society right now.
Right.
So again,
And so,
but please go ahead, Justin. That's that.
Right.
I don't want to hammer, but yeah, please.
Right. So the other thing is that, just to go back to our diversity question or inclusion, these sorts of problems affect anyone, everyone, of all backgrounds, of all income levels, of all, persuasions, anything. So the other thing is also, when we think about like people being of different backgrounds, you actually find commonalities. You actually find there are a lot of commonalities that we share as people or in a community or beyond the community. So that's the most important takeaway you should have, that we want to find common ground, despite that we may have different life experiences.
So that people feel like they belong. And this is a gun high. He published articles in the school newspaper. He's a Santa Clara University student. It was warm and inviting. He talked to dealt with serious issues because, again, there's been movies and things about this case years ago. There's been a lot of suicide because the Silicon Valley said we have to talk about this. And that happened to these both and having been almost 10 years ago. That serious note, thank you, Joe. And again, Halloween, when we think about these holidays and traditions, what happens is, I don't want to say Halloween's all about death, but again, we have a lot of Day of the Dead. There's all sorts of global holidays that are dedicated to celebrating dead and loved ones. Why? Because it's part of life. Death is part of life. So when we say this, even like, again, I don't want to say, but moon festivals, Diwali, all of these kinds of things, there's a Day of Atonement. These kinds of things are really to recognize and celebrate death, because that's how we learn. I don't want to say we want to go to a funeral, but Justin, thank you for going to that funeral, because like you said, it's not about you. It's about everybody else that you're showing that support. Because thank you for going to that funeral again. It's not that anybody wants to go to a funeral. It's part of our kind of civic duty, our citizenship. So thank you again. That's why I won't speak for Joe, but that's why I looked up for you. That's why we call you the wise Nelson, Justin. So Halloween, if we're just doing window dressing, to go back to Justin's diversity thing, Joe's going to take us out with a song. Let's let Joe kind of finish off some Halloween, how we celebrate Halloween. I think he was going to sing, last time we talked to him, like 25 or more Halloween songs. And most of them tend to be like classic rock songs that are honoring death or mega. Joe, what's going on here? Play it again. Lead us up to a song and let us come into November. But you must have learned something with all this prep work for celebrating Halloween.
What did I learn, man? You know what? I got to tell you, Matt, the thing that stuck with me the most about our Halloween concert was one of our singers, I would say, is one of our singers was approached by somebody in our audience. We just played a porch concert, And one of our singers was actually kind of like verbally attacked by somebody for our choice to sing Werewolf in London. Is that what it is? Werewolf in London, which is, I use the same chords as Sweet Home Alabama as it goes. And the person was really upset that we did a mashup with Werewolf in London and Sweet Home Alabama because of some of the choices that that they used